Tsi'li'xw, Tsi'li'xw, Lummi. My English name is Bill James or William James of the Lummi Nation, and I have so many things that I'd like to talk about today, but I really don't know where to begin. But I'm going to lead into the story of the Tsi'li'xw. So bear with me for a little while. I'm going to tell a few things first. Giving a little bit of history of how we come to be where we are and who we are as a people. I was born in 1944 at the fishing village down by the river, and I spent most of my life down at the fishing village. And as I listened to the old people talk years ago, tell the many stories that they shared with me, and sometimes I was a little bit too young to remember the stories, but I tried to catch as many as I can. But my first inspiration of who I was as a person, well, let me back up a little bit. I am a product of the day school. I'm a product of a boarding school where our language, our culture, our history, our language, and our values were taken away from us. This particular place right here was my first school. It was the day school right here. And if I could only share with you with what went on in these rooms here, the things that I saw happen to our people, the abuse that happened to some of my classmates years ago, where our culture and our language was taken away from us. And people have to know what happened to our people to better understand who we are. And like I was saying, that the boarding schools took all of these things away from us. And today most people don't have an understanding of it happened here to us, not just in Canada. It happened to us here too, between the church and the government, to take away our culture and our language, to take it away from us. And I have to say this because people have to know that it happened to our people too. And but back a little bit further, what happened to our people many years ago in the beginning, we were the ones that survived the Great Flood. My elder told the story from his father about the Great Flood and how we survived the Great Flood and came through the Great Flood. They also shared with me the stories of creation. They told the stories of how the animals, the birds, the mountains, the trees, the fishes were all created. They were created from the human beings, was the way my teacher taught me. Of course, every little group or band has their own version of the story of how we survived the Great Flood. But as we went up and down in the Great Flood and we survived, we became the Tsi'li'xw people. We are the survivors of the Great Flood. This is who we were, who we are actually. And my understanding was that there were two canoes. One landed on Orcas and one landed on San Juan when they came down from the big flood. And but that's a whole long story. I could take you on a big long story with that, but as we talk about what happened to our people, you have to know that we had a big epidemic of the smallpox. The smallpox came here and almost literally wiped our people out. After the smallpox, we had a flu epidemic, and the flu epidemic almost wiped our people out again. This is part of history that's not written in your history books. And this is where we have to work on developing our curriculum, telling the people what happened to us as a people. So with the change of values through the boarding schools, the change of our diet, the change of our ways and practices of our people, it's hard to comprehend how much change has taken place. After the people survived the flu, we were down to very few at Alalonga, West Sound. We were then moved to the mainland. The people living on the mainland were called the Lummi. The Hulanitum, the non-Indians, couldn't say Lummi, so they just brought it down to Lummi. That's how we happen to be called Lummi people today. But many things has happened to our people through the course of time. We have been involved with reinterment of our ancestors for many, many years. And people don't realize how much these things hurt, and the hurts that we carry within each and every one of us as we go and we handle the remains and the skulls of our ancestors, knowing well that this might be a direct ancestor of yours. You know, people can't understand that hurt that we carry, and sometimes it brings out a lot of anger in our people. We know our history. We know where we come from. We know what happened. But this is still going on today. This is still going on today with our ancestors being dug up here and dug up there as we go through time. As we progress through a little bit of time and the changes that have taken place, like I say, I was born at the fishing village. I saw literally thousands upon thousands upon thousands of salmon in our river. Our river was deep. We used to dive off the bridge into the river. Now it's only this deep. You know, the changes that have taken place in our world is hard to accept. And we know it comes from clear cutting. We know it comes from siltation. We know that this is where it comes from. So, when you go up the mountains, you look at the clear cutting that's taking place up there. We're cutting the trees down, and where do they go? They go to China, they go to Japan. You know, we have to start thinking about what we're doing to our environment. These are really important things we have to think about. So our water got shallow, our fish started diminishing, and then it comes pollution. Pollution comes after that. In my day, in his day, the farmers used to harvest peas for crops. They harvest the jolly green giant peas, okay? And they would dump the pea vines into the river, and the pea vines would rot in the water, and it would get in all the gills of all the salmon. The salmon's gills were all just choked up with pea slime. The nets were coated with pea slime, which killed off a lot of our salmon. We're not to blame for all these things that happen in our world. You know, people have to know what happened to our environment and what's happening to our environment. As I look around and I watch the tankers that are coming in into our Tsi'li'xw and the pollution that's causing, the coal that's being loaded and put onto the boats, and all of this is getting into our water. It's affecting our sea life. And everything that in the water is our livelihood and our life, because that's all of the food of our people. That's all the food of our people. We need help to protect all of these things as we go through this process. Again, like I say, these things are not only that, but the pipelines that are coming through our land up on the land to the north of us. We need to take a firm stand on protecting all of these things that come into, these things are all coming into our water. I used to hear one of the elders say years ago, I'll quote him what he says, "White man, beware, when we start to die, you're next." That was his words, not my words, but that's what he would say. White man, beware, because when we start to die, you're next. And our people are starting to die. So stand up for our environment. It's important that we do these things to protect the Tsi'li'xw, to protect our environment. In our day, we saw the water just turn white from herring, the roe from the herring. You never see that anymore. I've seen species disappear now already in my short lifetime. I'm only 74, but species that are disappearing now from our world. And it's happening more and more as we go through life. But there's a lot of things that, as we go back now to the story of how they are related to us, I heard, like I say, many stories from many elders years ago. And I try and relate to some of the stories that I heard. You hear the young people, I'm so proud of them singing the flood song to begin with. And I come from the people that survived the Great Flood. That's who I come from. But the story that I heard years ago from one of the elders was a story about Tsi'li'xw. Tsi'li'xw is a blackfish or the killer whale. The story began with a young man. He might have been 13, 14 years of age. He was an orphan. He didn't have no parents, and he was being raised by his grandmother, just him and his grandmother, out on the islands out there. Every day he had nothing to do, he had nobody to play with. So he'd go out and sit on the bluff. He would look out on the water, and he didn't know what to do with himself, just him and his granny. As time went on, he was sitting out there one day. Pretty soon he looked up and he could see the Tsi'li'xw, or the blackfish, squirting when they come up like that. He went home and he told his granny, he says, "Granny, I saw Tsi'li'xw today." "Oh yeah, sonny, yeah, okay, that's good." So day after day after day, he watched Tsi'li'xw come by. Every day they would go by. Pretty soon they jump. He watched them day after day. He decided one day that he was going to jump in his little canoe, and he was going to go out onto the water, and he was going to watch them up close. So he got in his canoe, and away he went. Here they come. Here comes Tsi'li'xw coming right at him. And pretty soon Tsi'li'xw jumped really high and he went down. Next one jumped, they went high and they went down like that. Each one jumped and they went down. Pretty soon they all jumped and went down, and they never came back up. He was in his little canoe, and he'd go round, around, looked around. He waited for them to come back up. They never came back up. So he went home and he told his granny, he says, "Granny," he says, "I saw Tsi'li'xw today. They all jumped, they all went down, but they never came back up." And she says, "Yeah, sonny, yeah, I know." She said, "I know." She never told him that she already knew about it. And so again, away he went, his little canoe. Again, he watched them jump, go down, go down. Again, he couldn't find them, didn't know where they went. Finally, on the following day, he decided that he was going to be right there on their tail. I'm going to be right there on their tail when they jump and they go down. I'm going to be right there. So he followed the last one. She jumped, she went down, he was right there. The vacuum sucked him under the water. He went way down under the water, and there were bubbles, that he could breathe with under the water there. He went way down deep under the water, and pretty soon he opened up his eyes and he looked, and he could see that real bright light. That must be the sun, that must be where I have to go. So he starts swimming toward that light. He swam up there toward that light. And he came out of the water, and he opened his eyes and he looked again. Here was all the Tsi'li'xw there, the blackfish there. They were taking off their gear. They took off their gear like that, and they were people. They were the people that lived under the water. People that lived under the water. One of them saw him when he came down there. "What are you doing down here? You don't belong down here with us. Get back in your canoe and go back to where you come from. I'm going to go tell my grandpa that you're here and you're not supposed to be here." So she went and told her grandpa that he was down there with them. Pretty soon, here comes the grandfather, real stern. What are you doing down here? You don't belong down here with us. You get back into your canoe and you go back to where you come from. The young man thought about it for a minute. He says, if I get in my canoe right now, he says, and I go back up there and I go back up, the current is so swift, I'm going to end up at Chastanam. I'm going to end up at Point Roberts. He says, I'm going to be way up there to the north, he said. He says, can I wait till the tide turns and bring me back to where I'm supposed to be going? Well, the grandfather says, well, that kind of makes sense, so you can just stay here till the tide turns. So, in the meantime, the grandfather assigned his granddaughter to watch him so he won't get into trouble. You watch him now, what he's doing. Don't let him get too far away. So this is what she did. She watched him. They were together for a little while, and pretty soon a little spark took place. They kind of made eyes at one another. And the grandfather, he saw this. He saw that little spark take place, and he thought to himself, well, that would be a good one for his granddaughter, so. Finally, the young man asked, he says, can I come down here and live with you? He says, I have no family, it's just my old grannies up there. And the grandfather says, well, you think about it for a minute. Your granny's sitting up there on a rock and she's crying and she's crying and she's crying. She's crying because she lost you to the water. She's just crying and crying like that. The grandfather says, well, maybe if you go and get permission from your granny, maybe you can come down and stay with us, So away he went on his canoe. He got back up on top of the water. Sure enough, there was his granny crying and crying and crying there. As time went on, he says, well, Granny, he says, I found me a girlfriend that lives under the water. And Granny says, oh, that's good, Sonny, that's good. I want to go down and live with them under the water down there. She says, yeah, you go ahead, Sonny, you go ahead. I'm old now, he says. She says, you have a life to live. You go and you be happy. So she was going to let him go and be happy in his life. But he was feeling bad because he was going to leave his granny alone. He was feeling bad because she was going to be all alone. So he made the decision well. He told his granny, he says, every day you go down to that rock down there, and I'll put I'll put a fish there for you. Every day you go down there and I'll pile the wood up for you on the beach down there. Every day you go down there and I'll put food for you down there every day. I'll take care of your granny. So Granny says, that's good. So this is what they did for a long time, and away he went down to the bottom of the water down there to live with the people that live under the water. So he was down there for a while. pretty soon Clothalmanston kind of moved away for a while. And Granny, she saw them, they were leaving. And pretty soon there was the two little ones at the end. Oh, that must be my Ingus, my grandson. So she was happy to see him being happy. Later on that year, when they come back, she could see the little itty-bitty one come right behind. That was her baby. That must be her great-grandbaby, so. But this is how we're related to the people that live under the water. This shows how there are relatives. They live under the water. I heard stories of people that live under the water, that people that live under the ice at the north. I've heard stories of the star people. I've heard stories of many different things in my lifetime. I do the best I can to keep the oral tradition alive as much as I can, to keep the stories for our young people, how important it is that they remember these things. They sound like they're fantasy stories, but that's the oral tradition of our people. Because things like that, we have to remember who we are and where we come from in this world. We have to know who we are and where we come from. But just remember, everything is changing in this world. Everything is changing in this world. Our trees are being cut, our water's diminishing, our food is depleting, the farmers are not farming anymore. There's a lot of things that are happening. I keep telling young people, what are you guys going to do when there's going to be no more grocery store to go to? You have to know what to eat and how to prepare it. That's what I teach the young people. You have to know these things for us to survive as a people. So take the time to learn, take the time to listen to the old people. Go and visit them, because it's important that you learn as much as you can. While you still have a resource of respected elders, have resources that you can call upon to listen to the stories of old. Because the elders are fast diminishing too. But like I was saying, that there's so many things like the Salmon Woman, how we have to protect our salmon. I'll share with you a little story about the Salmon Woman. Down at the fishing village down there was a village there. And all of a sudden one day, the salmon quit coming. There was no more salmon. Pretty soon the people start starving, and the people start dying off because they had no food to eat. So the elders had a gathering, and they had to decide what they were going to do to find food for their people, find salmon for their people. They went and they found this man, and they told him that you get in your canoe and you go out on the water, and you go out and you look and see if you can find any salmon. So this is what he did. He went out to the mouth of the river around Gooseberry Point, the north end of Lummi Island there, and he went out. The fog set in. The fog got really thick. Many years ago, our people knew how to navigate in the fog, you know. They had little bundles of sticks that they were like this. They would take and they'd put a stick behind them, and then they put it in the water to make sure that they don't get too far off course. They put that stick behind them and they watch which way it goes. They would navigate that way. So he was way out there and the fog was really thick. Pretty soon he could hear this woman, and she was crying and crying and crying. Those of you that are close to the water know that sound carries a long ways on the water. And so he paddled over toward that sound where he could find that lady. He went over to her and he asked her, he says, "How come you're crying?" He says, "Are you looking for food for your people like I am?" "No," she says, "that's not my problem." She said, "That's not my problem." And she says, "You see, I'm the Salmon Woman." And he says, "Well, I'm looking for food for my people." So she told him, "Take off your hat, your big hat, dip it into the water." And the salmon came up and he put them into his canoe. The salmon came into his canoe and he brought food back for his people. He was happy to get the food for the people. So he kind of made friends with her. He made friends with her and invited her to come back to the village. So they were happy when they were coming in off of the water. They were singing a happy song when they were coming in. They were singing a happy song when they came in. The people of the village didn't recognize that song. So they all rushed down to the beach down there to see who was coming. And they got down there and he introduced her as the Salmon Woman. And he gave the people all their fish to eat. He said, "Well, this is the Salmon Woman. She's going to come and stay with us for a while." So she was happy. So she told her children that were with her, "I want you kids to go up the river, and I want you folks to make your beds up there. I want you to make your beds up the river up there." So this is what they did. They went up the river and they made their beds up there. So time went on. Everybody was happy. There was lots of salmon, lots of food to eat because she was providing the salmon for the people. Pretty soon, one day, we don't know who it was. We don't know whether it was a child. We don't know whether it was a man or whether it was a lady. We don't know who it was. It only took one person. Fish again, that's all we ever eat around here is fish. Baked fish, boiled fish, fried fish, smoked fish. Fish, I'm just tired of fish. And the Salmon Woman, she heard that. She got offended because they were talking about her children, So she sent word. She says, "Well, my children, you come on now, let's go. They don't like us anymore." So she gathered up all her children, and away they went out again. They went way out again. Before too long, the people started starving again. The people started dying again. Again, they had a meeting of elders, and they sent the same man out. They told him, you go out there and you apologize to her. You go apologize to her and you welcome her back to the village. You promise her that that'll never happen again. So that's why today, as we go through life, we honor our salmon. We honor our first salmon that comes to us. We show our respect to the first salmon that comes because we have to respect her and her children. This is why we do our first salmon ceremony. This is why we do that every year for our people. So every year our nation has a first salmon ceremony. And but little things like that, we have to remember why. And this is when we teach our children, you never say, I don't like it, because your food can be taken away from you. If you say, I don't like that, you say, no, thank you, I don't care for any right now, but thank you, You never say, I don't like that. When you speak, you have to show your respect for your food. So haiska atsa huyan na kwakulati asqual and shish huyan listen atsa squal atsa nasalalo klachaskeno hisi neat white.